Hello, my name is Karen Yeager and I'm Dean of Studies at Knox Grammar School and I'm an English teacher. I've also been a head teacher of English, a supervisor of HSC marking, and I'm President of English Teachers New South Wales. We're going to be looking at the area of study, the reading task, which is section 1 of your HSC paper 1. And this is the one that's worth 15 marks, the same as the text that you're studying for section 3 and the same as your creative writing. And so you need to make sure that you truly understand what representation is, and you need to make sure you understand the concept of discovery. And we're just going to go through this really briefly because what you need to practice with your teachers is analysing everything from poetry to non-fiction text to extracts from prose. If we look at what came back from the Marking Centre, and it is very, very important you read on the Board of Studies site, the BOSTES site, you actually look at the feedback from marking centres because they will tell you what the markers observed in strong responses. And sometimes when you look at weaker responses, you can actually even look what might be addressed the following year, particularly if it was something that was neglected by the cohort. So if we look at the first dot point, strong responses demonstrated perception and insight into the ideas embedded in texts and supported a thesis with effective textual evidence. So in fact, one thing that students did really well, they looked for the overarching concept about discovery. Each year, when the papers are created by the exam committee, they actually have an overarching theme or concept. So for example, this year's HSC, albeit belonging for area of study, the overarching concept was about identity and how that's formed by our relationship with communities and others. So each text in the reading task actually built towards the notion of identity. And that carried on to the creative writing and over into the actual essay itself. So the reading task, it is vital you are searching for that because then this is going to actually allow you to build your learning into section 2 of your paper and section 3 of your paper. So it's a very vital step in the exam sequence. Never do your essay first. Most students are tempted to do that because they try and think I might have remembered it. Do this first. It's designed to build the learning, the field of learning. So by the time you come to the last section of the essay, you've actually been provided with lots of ideas and evidence so that you can tackle the question with confidence. They also want really good textual evidence for the reading task. So it's very, very important that you look for those key quotes or that key image. And it's not enough just to say, oh, the writer uses a simile, an alliteration, an assonance, a shopping list, in other words, means nothing. You won't get any marks. It is important you use specific examples from the text. So you're going to be looking for those specific textual evidence that refer to the idea. You're going to think, what is the idea of the meaning conveyed? Second dot point talks about weaker responses. They simply described. They didn't analyse. They didn't explain. They didn't evaluate. They simply described what they saw. Now, when you looked at the mean for this section of the paper, it's actually been rising, interestingly enough, in the state of New South Wales for the last 4 years. But if you look at the mean, that is the average mark out of 15, you're looking at around about 8.5 to 9. So you think there's a lot of students, therefore, that are probably losing just that 1 mark every now and then. For the first time, they changed the format of the reading task this year in the HSC. And suddenly you had a 6-mark question for the last question, and you had 3 marks instead of 2. So see how easy it could be just to drop a single mark and end up with 1 mark less for those sections. Then the last dot point, they don't just want language techniques. So a lot of students will say to me, how many techniques should I include? Well, we can talk about if it's worth 3 marks, you should be using at least 4. But that's not what matters. What matters are your ideas. Whether you conceptually understand where the composer's coming from, what is their perspective on belonging, what is the meaning being conveyed through the language and form. That's where you're going to be able to shine in an HSC examination.